That's right, folks. Another episode of the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your host, Bobby LaMarco, and today we're going to be diving into the top takeaways from Week 3. How are the Chargers going to replace Big Mike Williams? How should you replace him in your fantasy lineups? We're here to break all that down and more on the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast, starting right now. All right, folks, bringing in my first guest for today's show. It's Derek Favret. You can follow him on Twitter or X at Derek_Favret. What's going on, Derek?
Hey, Bobby. How you doing?
I'm ready to rock. Ready to talk some takeaways today. Honestly, we have the two. I like the Monday night doubleheader. I do. But
I do as well.
Can we just get some 4 o'clock games? I mean, I know it's 4 o'clock. The afternoon slate had 3 games yesterday. Can we just balance our books, people?
Yeah,
that's all I'm asking. Yeah, 9 games at the 1 o'clock. I had 8 monitors up, and somehow I couldn't get every game up. That's ridiculous. Anyway, let's bring in our next guest. It's Gladys L. Tyler. You can follow her at Gladys L. Tyler on Twitter. What's going on, Gladys?
Not much. How are you, Bob and Derek?
I'm good. I like working with you guys because you guys have your Twitter handles are your names, just like me. We make it easy for people. Just go follow our names on Twitter, and you will find our content. And today's show, we're going to be breaking down some of the top takeaways from Week 3 and discussing some of the big injuries. And we have to start at the top. And of course, for this one episode, we're going to be talking about Mike Williams. And essentially, he's done for the season. He's done. Torn ACL, the big one. Now you got Quentin Johnston, Josh Palmer, Keenan Allen just lighting up the world. What does this mean for Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler and company? Derek, kick it over to you first. What's your thoughts about the Mike Williams injury and the impact it could have in fantasy football?
Yeah, 3rd week in a row where we've seen a major injury to a star player that we counted on in fantasy. It's just awful to see. Certainly Josh Palmer, he's going to be highly sought after in waivers this week. I'm sure certainly be probably trying to get a hold of him. I also think it's a little boost for Gerald Everett. He's really he's starting to come on. You've seen his target share increase each week, and now I think this just opens up a few more opportunities for him. So I'm also in that tight end wasteland that we see out there. I'm going to try to get a little more of Gerald Everett.
Gladys, thoughts?
Next week, if you are streaming tight ends, I would go for Everett. They play the Raiders, who are giving away the 8th most fantasy points to tight ends. And Fireman's just scored 41. He should have had 2 touchdowns, had 1 touchdown on him. But for season long, I would go to Palmer. He's gotten above 50% of the snap share. And after Williams went out this week, he had 60% of the snap share, 8 targets. So if season long Palmer, but if you're streaming tight ends, go for Everett next week.
So the schedule is interesting because they have the Raiders next week. Good call, bad defense. But then they have a bye. Then they got the Cowboys and Chiefs. So Cowboys, I don't even know what happened yesterday. I don't know what's going on anymore. We're going to get into that in a little bit, but that was weird. And then you also have the Chiefs defense, who's looked pretty good now that Chris Jones is back, and they shut down Trevor Lawrence, and they shut down, I guess they shut down Justin Fields, or did Justin Fields shut down Justin Fields? I don't know. But just so I wanted to take a look last year, because Mike Williams missed some time last year, but also everybody missed time last year. So there was only 2 games last season when Josh Palmer, Gerald Everett, Keenan Allen, and Austin Eckler were on the field together. In those 2 games without Mike Williams, Austin Eckler led the team in targets with 21. Now, my thought process for this is the first thing that's going to happen is if Quentin Johnston doesn't step right in and be the 1-for-1, Eckler might get a few more targets out of the backfield. If you see right after this week, if that Eckler team is 0-3, I don't see it as a bad thing to go poke around because Eckler is probably going to be out this week, and also they have the bye, so you might even be able to wait a week. If that team ends up being 1-3 or 0-4, the Austin Eckler team, they're going to need to win now. You could probably give them a nice offer, try to get Eckler out of the bye because I think he's going to start seeing some more targets. Keenan Allen's just been awesome. I mean, if you drafted Keenan Allen in the 3rd round, it's amazing. And I know a guy who might have done that a few times. Yeah, people get it.
But you're also on pins and needles, though, because you know how the scenario goes, and unfortunately for Keenan Allen owners, it's not always good.
Well, first of all, Derek, can you just suck the life out of my happiness any harder? I mean, my God, I couldn't even get one sentence in. Derek's like, he's going to get hurt. It's over.
I didn't say he was going to. I just said you're on pins and needles.
I know. No, I am. And honestly, that's why Josh Palmer is really a nice player to pick up, and Quentin Johnston. Now, I think if you need a start this week, you got to go Palmer. But if you are a 3-0, 4-0 team, you might want to go after Johnston and stash him because he might have a bigger second half, much more talent, first-round pick type player. But I do like Gerald Everett next week against the Raiders, a very solid QB stream. Let's jump down to the next one. And let's just say last night in the text message conversation, Gladys just is over. She's done. She's talking about, she's like, I can't, nothing makes sense anymore. And so I had to decipher that. And we've realized two things. One, that the Arizona Cardinals are not a dumpster fire, and they actually beat the Cowboys, and they look good against the Giants. Josh Dobbs has just, I don't know what it is about Josh Dobbs. It's not pretty, but he just throws it, and somehow it's just right on target every time. Very cool. And then also another one you want to talk about a little bit is the Denver Broncos madness. So Gladys, give us your thoughts about all of it. What's your final thoughts about Arizona, the Denver Broncos, and everything else that's making you want to grind? What's grinding your gears, Gladys?
I first want to say hi to Jamie 2 times in one night. Way to go, James. I love him. As far as Denver goes, it's like karma's a bitch, and she has Sean Payton's name written all over. That's what you get for talking mad shit about another head coach in preseason, and you lose by 50 points. I don't ever remember Nathaniel Hackett losing by 50 points, but I could be wrong. I don't even think if you combined all the losses that he had, it was a 50-point loss. So Denver is single-handedly killing. Like, you would think that a loss by 50 points might be good for fantasy because garbage time points count as points in fantasy. We didn't even have garbage time points. So it's like, thanks guys. No garbage time points, no real points. Denver just, I don't even know. Yeah. And then this week they play probably the most eyesore game in the world. Do not watch it. Denver Broncos against Chicago Bears. What is there to see? There's going to be no fantasy value on either side of that ball. You can't do it. Pivot to Arizona, guys. Arizona has been competitive all 3 weeks. Like, they played well the first week. They play well the first half, and then they usually lose it in the second half. The game against the Cowboys, they didn't do that. They simply outplayed the Cowboys, so maybe they're coming into their own. But life has no meaning right now. Like, you just like you make up the meaning, and that's what it is. That's what my whole point was. Arizona's good or reasonable, and Sean Payton, it sucks. The Broncos suck.
Derek, before I kick it over to you, I got to say this. I actually am the opposite of Gladys when it comes to the Bears-Broncos game. I think that's going to be the greatest dumpster fire of all. They're going to just be so many fantasy points. I guarantee those defenses look so bad. I think that Russell Wilson and Justin Fields can bounce back. Maybe I'm a little bit too optimistic, Derek, about all the dumpster fires going around the NFL.
Yeah, well, let me just add to that. Can we believe that Russell Wilson actually has more fantasy points than Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Trevor Lawrence, Dak Prescott, and Justin Fields? Can we believe that?
Yeah, he's playing from behind.
Unreal, yeah. A couple other things that I thought too, because you mentioned this, nothing is as it seems, and I started looking at some of the performances and running backs and wide receivers. Adam Thielen is the 7th highest scoring wide receiver in fantasy.
Not a boy.
Who predicted that? Who predicted that? 2 rookie running backs are in the top 10. I mean, Kieran Williams is in the top 10. He's only played 2 games, not counting tonight's action, which, of course, he hasn't really done all that much. But, yeah, unbelievable. Vikings 0-3. Bengals could go 0-3. Here we go. We've got the Commanders at 2-1. It's Gladys hit the nail on the head here. There's nothing as it seems. These the first 3 weeks. It's crazy.
Well, one thing that it is to see is Patricio coming on the show, being loyal, jumping on, calling out the shot. I appreciate you calling out my rankings, man. Hey, it's been fun. I got some Mostert on my leagues too. He's 3-0. We appreciate it, man. Obviously, Jamie bringing it on. Jamie, what's up, man? Always glad to have you on as well. Gladys is doing 2 shows in one night. She's a crazy person. That's why we love her. Every second of it. All right, we're going to number 3 here, and we're going to talk through about where have all the top running backs gone through week 3. And before I get you to Derek, who wanted to talk through this, I put up an interesting stat on Twitter, okay? X. Here's the top 10 running backs in ADP and where they are in points per game through the Monday night game before these games. Okay. CMC RB5, Eckler injured. Robinson, Bijan, RB11. Barkley, injured. Chubb, IR. Pollard, RB9. Derrick Henry, RB26. Josh Jacobs, RB32. Najee Harris, RB55. Ramondre Stevenson, RB22. Not the best year for first round and second round running backs, but what's your thoughts, Derek? Are you feeling any bounce back? Do you have any positive things to say about the future of these stud running backs?
Not a lot, really. I've said it a couple times on our show, players like Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, who haven't had a full preseason. There's some evidence to suggest that, players like that just aren't going to either play up to their level or, even play a full season. And we're kind of seeing that. I mean, this is a great example in just those three right there. I mean, the Nick Chubb injury aside, the top 10 running backs from last year, many of them you mentioned. Dalvin Cook was in there. Miles Sanders was in there last year. Travis Etienne, all top 10 running backs last year. Where are they now? Our top 10 right now, we've got James Cook, James Conner, Tony Pollard, the Robinson brothers, Brian and Bijan. Zach Moss is in the top 10. Yeah, this is, again, going back to, Gladys, this is just crazy. It's just crazy what we're seeing. We counted on certain running backs to be our anchors, and we're just not seeing it. And honestly, the zero running back approach in drafts, we're going to see. I think we're going to see more of that moving forward because we're just seeing evidence that, except for a few players like you said, CMC being one of them, you just can't count on these running backs to return their first round draft value.
Gladys, thoughts?
It's crazy.
Why wouldn't zero running back strategy in pretty much all my drafts, which I have the only saving grace is that last week I didn't have a running back. I only had DeAndre Swift and I had to play him and I didn't want to play him and he balled out. But I agree. There's no sense in it. CMC is going to be good. And that's it. That's all you can count on. DeAndre Swift, maybe a week or two. I have Brian Robinson. Every now and then he shows up. But zero running back strategy, way to go. You can't trust him. Can't trust any of these boys.
I through week 3, yes. But when Eckler comes back, we're going to be flash forward 4 weeks from now when Eckler and Barkley are back and they're balling out. We're going to be like, oh my God, this has been the best. But yes, through 3 weeks, I do feel like it's been an absolute disaster. But there's been a lot of middle to late round guys, 5, 6, 7, that you probably picked up. Guys like Mostert. And if you were watching us, we talked a lot about him. We talked a lot about DeAndre Swift in our shows. So those guys have been carrying your team if you were able to get them in the back. But if you did go running back early, no bueno. Let's talk about one of the reasons why running backs have struggled so much. It is the Browns' run D. And so in years past, the Browns' run D has been kind of fun to play against. They've been dominant. They haven't been dominant. People have been running all over them. That is not the case anymore. First of all, Jim Schwartz is their new DC. I don't know what it is about Jim Schwartz. He comes in, does a great job, and then everybody hates him in 3 years, and then he has to leave. He always is a good defensive coordinator, but he cannot stay in one place, it seems like. But he came into this Browns defense, and they have become absolutely dominant against the run. Joe Mixon, 13 for 56. Najee Harris, 10 for 43. Derrick Henry, 11 for 20. Next week, you have the Ravens. I think that Browns-Ravens game is going to be ugly. So I'm not expecting too much from either of those teams. I think you're probably going to fade whatever running back the Ravens have at this point. I'll probably be back there. So tune in. I'll be out there running for the Ravens at this point. But Melvin Gordon, whoever you're thinking, don't even bother. Then the Browns have a bye. And then you have CMC and then the hot Zach Moss. So what's your thoughts, Gladys, about this matchup? Have you noticed any trends? Are you kind of be active fading this matchup going forward? What's your thoughts about the Browns run day?
Well, I noticed that all the running backs that have run against the Browns in 3 weeks, it's been 3 weeks, have not surpassed more than 11 carries, right? So teams give up. Like Derrick Henry had the fewest carries that he's had in 3 weeks against the Browns defense. Of course, they had to go to the passing game because they were so far behind. But it's not a volume-based the Browns aren't allowing a volume base. Najee Harris relies on volume. That didn't happen. His was so low. Derrick Henry, in his 11 attempts, averaged 1.8 yards per carry. So they were stuffing the run, and teams just quit on them. So I will say, do not play. I mean, Tennessee has always been that. Not Tennessee. I'm sorry. Cleveland has always been, you play your running backs against them, and you're going to be okay. All they have is Myles Garrett. Jim Schwartz has changed that. So if you have especially if you have a volume-based running back, do not go against the Browns defense. Do not go against Schwartz. He will make you cry.
Derek?
Yeah, in one of my leagues, I've been streaming streaming defenses. Yesterday, before game time, we picked up the Browns defense. Believe it or not, they were on the wire. Picked them up. Solid day. They're going to be the defense for my team moving forward. But yeah, they're for real. Don't run against the Browns defense. I mean, you had mentioned that held the Titans in check. 94 total yards on offense. 1 offensive touchdown against the Browns in 3 games. They're for real.
Although I will refute Jamie's Browns defense is going to win the AFC North comment, because that's just crazy talk.
That's okay, Jamie. You bring the comments, my friend. If you feel that way, we support you, dude. No worries there as well. She does not. She does not, unfortunately. All right. So this week we have some injuries at the quarterback position. It does sound like Anthony Richardson should return from his concussion, but if he continues to be out, we've seen guys like Gardner, Minshew kind of perform well. These backup quarterbacks, Andy Dalton, baby. I mean, the ginger, the red rifle, baby. I love it. He was absolutely awesome for fantasy. This time it could be Jameis Winston. Gladys, you wanted to talk quickly about some of these backups stepping into good offenses. What's your thoughts about Winston and Minshew? And maybe throw in some Andy Dalton if you want to give some ginger.
I actually played Andy Dalton. So yeah, I love Andy Dalton right now. I think that Garoppolo's in concussion protocol, so he probably is not going to play. I don't think anyone has played the week after the concussion protocol since the Tua thing. Derek Carr, they're saying, is week to week with a shoulder sprain. I like Minshew. I think Minshew is good for the game, and I think Minshew might be good for the Colts. Richardson is good for fantasy, and I would, if they put Richardson back, I think the Jets should be making some calls. I think the Jets should be making some calls to New Orleans. The Jets should be making some calls to Indianapolis. The Jets should be calling Carolina, because all three of them are better than what the Jets are putting on the field right now.
For real. That's like no joke. They have Tim Boyle back there. Tim Boyle, call up your backup quarterback at this point. It's over for Zach. He's just not working out. What's your thoughts, Derek, here? Are you going to get savvy with any of these backup QBs? Anybody stand out to you as a potential 2 QB streamer guy?
No, I'm probably not. But I will say I think Gardner Minshew is the best backup quarterback in the league. I mean, he can come onto the field, whether it's, come on during the game because of an injury or come to a spot start, and he just brings excitement, and they tend to win. So I like him there. We've seen him over an extended period, and it kind of, the shine kind of fades off. I think he's the best backup quarterback, and I like to see him stay in that role. I do think Richardson comes back next week, so I'm probably not. Winston, he'll hold fort until Carr comes back. It'll be helpful that Amon-Ra is back as well next week. I think that'll just, make it a little easier for him. But, for fantasy purposes, unless I'm really in a bind, I'm probably staying away from either one of these, and the ginger as well. I'm going to stay away from him as well, unless I'm really in need.
Okay, well, all right. I mean, that's rude, but you know what? It's fine.
I know. I'm just a downer for you all night tonight, aren't I?
The people don't even know what you said to me pre-show, which is just a whole. I mean, at this point, we're going to move on. Anyway, my point is, with these backup quarterbacks, I think the offensive talent, especially in New Orleans, I mean, they have legit, tight ends. They have legit wide receivers. They got Alvin Kamara coming back. It is a legit all-around offense and a really good offensive line. Now, the question, though, is I think it's matchup dependent. I think if you see next week, you have the Bucs. Now, the Bucs, whatever. Tonight's game has been kind of blah. But Jalen Hurts hasn't lit it up throwing the football, and the Bucs have been pretty good. They are a little banged up with Charlton Davis, but I don't know if I'm going to go out and start Winston. But after the Bucs game, they have the Patriots, Texans, and Jags. So that schedule is kind of meh for quarterbacks. But at the same time, I do think that Jameis Winston, because of the talent around him, would be a streamer option in a good matchup. Let's jump down to the next one. This is my topic. I want to talk a little bit about the Texans defense because DeMeco Ryans has these guys balling out. And maybe the Jags aren't good. Maybe I don't know how Trevor Lawrence took a step back, under this offense. But, I mean, this is the second week in a row he's underperformed. The biggest thing that I thought was notable for the Texans D is how they shut down number one wide receivers. So week one, Zay Flowers played against them. He went 5 for 58 on the outside. Okay, he actually had a nice PPR day, but he also had 4 receptions from the slot. Michael Pittman, 5 for 37 out wide. Calvin Ridley, 3 for 40 total this week. So outside receivers have really struggled against this team. The next matchup coming up is the Steelers. That could be a George Pickens issue. Then it's the Falcons with Drake London. Then it's the Saints with Olave. You got the Panthers with DJ Chark and company. So I think this matchup is something I'm going to watch over the next few weeks, trying to find trends. But what's your thoughts, Derek, about this one? And Brett Maher is about to kick a field goal, so feel free to jump right in.
Yeah, no, this is really a good under-the-radar call on you, Bobby, because, like you said, holding the likes of Pittman and Ridley the last 2 weeks, well below, their expectations. And then you mentioned the receivers coming up, that are typically going to be starters in every fantasy league. So, it's either going to be temper expectations or even consider sitting some of these. So, yeah, I think this one's going to, fall under the radar. So, people need to pay attention to this because the Texans defense against these wide receivers is legit.
Gladys?
Well, I went to the Rasball slot versus wide, and the league average is 34.8 points to wide receivers, 11.4 to slots, 23.4 to wide. The Texans are below all of that. I'm saying that there's not a wide receiver that you want to play against the Texans defense. You want to run against them. The Texans are 28.4, so they are 6 points lower than the league average is what they're holding the wide receiving point to, according to the Rasball slot versus wide.
So this is the other thing, too. I brought these up because they're different than last year. Like, we know certain defenses are dominant. Like, the Texans were awful last year, but they, like, with DeMeco Ryans coming in, this whole new defense, this defensive-minded head coach, and a lot of the moves they made this offseason to the back end of that defense is showing up now. And we have to, change mid-year. We're like, all right, maybe this matchup isn't – they're not a dumpster fire. They just smoked the freaking Jags. The Jags who won the division, who everybody thought was, going to compete with the Chiefs and the Bengals and all this. They smoked them. So I think we have to pivot. This is something to watch. I think George Pickens, if he's your wide receiver 2, he's at best a wide receiver 3 in your mind. You have to downgrade him slightly. I don't think he's a full fade, but it's definitely something to watch. We'll talk about that more in the matchup show later this week. The last one, folks, we're going to take a trip back, okay? We're hopping in our time machine. We're going to have a little fun. We're jumping back a few weeks. Let's even take it a few years. Let's say we jumped all the way back. I'm in college days. Me and Gladys are back in college, dancing around. Derek's a young man. The hair's flowing. We're all having a good time, okay? We all are now flash forward. We're going into the season. We have the first pick of the draft. Derek wanted to ask the people, would you, if you had to start over, would you take Tyreek Hill at 101, or do you think this is just early season schedule? Derek, tell the people, how high should you be on Tyreek Hill rest of season?
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously, you've seen what's going on with Miami just as well as I have. And, Tyreek Hill has been right in the middle of it. Whether Waddle's in or not, he's just getting his and he's eating, fantasy scoring. Justin Jefferson used consensus or CMC, your consensus number ones. Justin Jefferson, number 4th in fantasy scoring right now, PPR leagues. CMC is 6th. So you think actually Tyreek Hill is number 1, right? Well, he's actually number 2 now behind Keenan Allen.
Oh, Keenan Allen.
Which is a nod back to, what we talked about earlier. But anyway, so, Tyreek Hill, at earliest, he's going middle first round, maybe late first round in most drafts. If you go back and redo your drafts from a month ago, is he top 4, top 5 now? I think he probably is. There's no reason, I don't think anyway, there's no reason to think that Miami's going to let up on the gas pedal here. I think, their whole offense, you're going to want to get a piece of that. And Tyreek Hill is going to be probably the number 1 outside of Tua, maybe Tyreek is going to be the number 1 player that you're going to want to get. So I think it's legit moving forward. If you can trade for him, which, you're going to pay a steep price, go get him. I think he's going to be stout, and if you have him, just hold on.
So I put up a poll. And by the way, they did this without Waddle, by the way. Waddle didn't even play in this game. And Waddle in the first game didn't do that much, which is the craziest part. They haven't even unleashed their whole entire talent on the league yet. I mean, Mike McDaniel's over there. Mike McDaniel's like the coolest dude. He doesn't even look like a head coach. I love every second of it. I can't get enough of it. But I just put up a poll. Gladys, I want to get your thoughts on this.
Okay.
I asked our followers, if you had RB depth, okay, let's say you had a bunch of RB depth and you're kind of, let's say, weak at wide receiver, would you trade Tyreek Hill to get Chris Olave and Tony Pollard? Okay. So I asked, team one was the Tyreek Hill team, trading him away. Team two was the team acquiring Pollard and Chris Olave. 42% of people said they'd rather have Pollard and Olave. 35% said it was a fair trade. So that's how high people are on Tyreek Hill, that you are willing to you think it's fair to trade Tony Pollard and Chris Olave. What's your thoughts on that?
I don't. If you had running back depth, you said, so you don't really need Pollard.
Well, your RB depth is like the guys that are playing well, probably. Let's say it's like you have Mostert and he hit, and he's like your RB2 now, like that, something like that.
I don't think it's a fair trade. I think that, I mean, Tyreek Hill's balling out. It's 3 games in. While Waddle's coming back, Mike McDaniel is probably the coolest coach on earth, next to Mike Tomlin, second to Mike Tomlin. But Chris Olave, and no, I would not make that trade. Although Tyreek Hill is a baller.
What about you, Derek? Would you make that trade?
If I don't know if it would be for Olave. I would probably I would make the trade if that wide receiver was right, and I don't think Olave is the right name. Perhaps you might actually get Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase and maybe not a Pollard, but another running back of that ilk. I would probably make that trade. Yes.
Olave is the wide receiver 10 right now. So it's like essentially you're dropping from the number 1 wide receiver to a wide receiver 10 and getting an RB1, which I think it's your preference, right? Like if you were high on Olave preseason, you probably say, I'll take Olave and Pollard. But if you're not into Olave preseason, you're probably like, nah, I don't want that. I'm going to just take Tyreek Hill. I think that's going to probably sway. I think it's close enough. But the other thing I just wanted to bring up about this that's important is the Chargers, week 1, through the first 2 weeks, have allowed the second most fantasy points out wide. Okay, 44.5. Then they played the Patriots, and he had 15 fantasy points. The Patriots are middle of the pack, 19th fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. Then it was the Broncos, who are the 7th, and after this week, probably in the top 2. Okay, 30.7. So he's had 2 top 10 matchups and gone off, and then the one matchup where he didn't have a top 10, he had a nice low-end wide receiver 15-point week. Okay. Coming up, he has the Bills, 31st, Giants, 16th, Panthers, 29th, Eagles, 5th, okay? Well, who knows what the Eagles will be after a few weeks. But my point is, I think this might be a sell-high moment. Like, he's not going to be 30 points a game good, all right? He might finish like 22, 23, 24 points, but I think if you could get a low-end wide receiver 1 and an RB1 in a trade, I would do it because I think he's going to come back down and normalize a little bit. So if you could make that kind of trade, I would take Pollard.
Yeah, and I would even venture to say, if you've got Tyreek Hill, there's going to be some rosters out there where you may have him and still have lost at least 1 game, maybe even 2 games. You're starting out 1 and 2 in the first 3 and have Tyreek Hill. Then you need to sell him and bolster your team. You're making trades to make your team better, not to win the trade. You make the trade to make your team better. So if you can do that and make your team better, it's worth it.
All right. I love it. I love it. This is our top takeaways from this week. Follow us across the board at Razzball Fantasy on YouTube, IG, and TikTok. And of course, make sure you jump over to Razzball.com because Gladys, tell the people we got upcoming this week for your article on Razzball.com.
I have the sexy defenses that you want to attack with your quarterback, wide receiver, running back, and tight end. And please, if you have any questions, DM me instead of putting them on the comments, although I do love the comments.
Derek, what about you, man? What do you got coming up this week?
Yeah, 5 things to know for week 4. Look for that on Thursday. I'll get you set up for the weekend games. Give you some detail, break down some numbers, and just give you some things to think about before you set your lineups for Sunday.
I can tell you this, you're going to walk away from all these articles and you're going to be thinking about stuff that you weren't thinking about going into that article. That's the best part about what we do at Razzball. It's about matchups, exploiting defenses. We tell you the matchups to attack. We don't just tell you to start players for any given reason. That's why I love Razzball. That's why I love Gladys. Go follow her at Gladys L. Tyler on Twitter. That's why I love Derek. Go follow me, Derek_Favret on Twitter. And go follow me at Bobby LaMarco. I'm okay too. I do some good things sometimes as well. I'm out of here. Thanks for joining.
Bye, guys.
We're out of here, folks. See you later.